Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. I'm Robbie.
I'm Jason.
And welcome to the table. Here we are, episode number 34.
34.
I believe. 34.
Yep.
So I'm here. We didn't expect it. We didn't know, but I'm here and can guarantee that I will not be here the next episode. So that is Jason's going to be carrying it off. But Jason, how you feeling, sir?
I'm doing well, man. It's funny because you and I have talked for like 30 minutes beforehand, and then finally we start the episode, my voice cracks. I don't understand. Like, we've literally talked perfectly fine for 30 minutes as we prep for this episode. In the moment that we start recording and it's ready to go, like, my voice goes. It's wild. That's Murphy's Law.
Dude, and Lindsay is home right now because we're recording on a different day than we normally do. She's normally at work when we record. And she was like, I think I'm going to put the dogs in their crates. And she said, well, I'm here, so is it okay if I leave them out? And I was like, just know, Lindsay, like that I'm going to talk to Jason for a little bit before we start recording. And as soon as I hit that record button and we're ready to go, they'll start barking. So they're excited to see you guys as well. But no, exciting things around the corner. Really, really pumped. Really pumped for today's episode. This is a game that I actually introduced Jason to.
This is true.
So one of the rare times that we have that feeling in this, or that it's not a game that like we both knew from coming up in our gaming lives. But what games have you been playing besides the game that we're talking about today, Jason?
It's funny. Like, this is the first episode where I'm intentionally only talking about one. That's not an interview episode, because interview or top 10 list, we typically only talk about one. But I haven't played because of life. I got a lot going on in my life right now. So, and the game I played, I literally played this afternoon. So I almost went a whole 2 weeks or a little bit less than 2 weeks without playing an actual in-person game. Now, I did play Fromage since the last time, but I talked about Fromage last time. So I played a brand new game to us today called Forest Shuffle. Forest Shuffle is getting a lot of love. We have a lot of games on the tapestry that could possibly be a future game. It's one that could be because it's so lightweight. But the gist of Forest Shuffle is that you're playing out, you're building a tableau, and that you, as part of your action, you put out a tree, and then you have these cards that have two sides, a line down the middle, and it could be a fox on one side or a hare on the other. And then on a future turn, after you've played a tree, you can slide that card so you only show the half that you're trying to do. Or it has top or bottom cards as well. Like, it has the traditional standard size cards. So the top could be a butterfly, the bottom could be a toad. I'm going to put the butterfly on this tree. I'm going to put the toad on the tree. It's essentially a set collection game is all it is. Super easy play. You either draw cards or play cards. That's the entire game. You're either drawing from the deck or from a tableau that's in front of you, or you're playing cards. The other cool thing about Forest Shuffle, and I've wanted it a while, it's a Black Friday game. I got it 50% off. So it was like $15, which was awesome. When you pay for your cards, every card to play, almost every card has a cost. But the cards you pay, the cost is just cards in your hand. So at most you can have 10 cards in your hand that are hidden or they're private. I'm going to pay this when it costs 2 cards. You can pay any 2 cards from your hand to a board that is now open for anyone to take from. But you could have this unique thing where if you follow a certain rule and you play a card, you could take another turn and you could take those cards right back. It's super, like, the gameplay is light and it's meant to be lightweight, but I could see this game being, if you're paying attention to everybody else, an incredibly slow game. Because Liz and I, including the teach, took like an hour and we were trying not to pay attention to each other. It's one, if you learn more the symbols and whatnot, it'll go faster. But like, it's the coolest thing is set collection. Your pay to play is from cards that are already in your hand. And it's just any card. It doesn't matter, but you're putting it out onto the board that now a later player can take as part of their action of either take cards or play and get something. Super cool. The art's amazing. Force Shuffle, lightweight. I wouldn't play with more than 3 or 4 players because I think unless you just want a long game for a light game. Set collection. I love set collection and using cards. And in the end, you can play cards to do stuff. If you play cards and follow specific rules, you can do other stuff. So Force Shuffle, a fun one. Dude,
sounds like a good time. Yeah. I think that, like, there's just times, right, where the world is, like, life is so busy and hectic that I appreciate this about our hobby, that you can find a lightweight game to just kind of like, hey, we just want to play something this afternoon.
Yeah.
Like, let's just throw something on the table. No one's sitting there like crunchy. Because sometimes, life just fries your brain. And you're like, I don't have the bandwidth to process a game of Dinosaur Island. Nor do we have the time to process a game of Dinosaur Island. And so being able to throw that out there can be huge. I'm with you. I only played one game. We in preparation doing stuff. And my main partner who plays games with me, usually she gets home from work, and that's about all she has in the tank, because she is creating life. So Small World is what we ended up playing with our friends Ryan and Abby. Came over for a little bonfire, and then we kind of looked at each other and we were like, okay, do we want to squeak in a game tonight? Yeah, let's squeak in a game tonight. So we ended up playing Small World, their first time playing it. And I told Jason before we started playing, like, it's just a game that I know so well because I have so many reps on it. And we actually talked about it in episode 14. So I won't describe how the game goes. If you've not listened to our previous episodes, you can find out really a lot of our feelings about Small World, but a couple of highlights because this game was hilarious. So I have stated before, I've never lost a game of Small World where I got skeletons, as that race pops up. And my dream opening is to get trolls as my first race, because when trolls go into decline, their caves stay. So, Lindsay went first. She took something. I can't remember what she took. And then I was up and trolls were available. And I was like, game on. Couldn't ask for a better start. Let's go. It's an open board and I have trolls. So I start off real strong, feeling good. Everyone goes through their first turn, and then Abby takes her last race, and at the top of the table is commando skeletons. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the game, commando is a special power where you take every space for one less token. And skeletons, for every 2 spaces you take, you get a new skeleton. So normally they're kind of throttled and slowed down by the fact that you have to use your army of skeletons 2 at a time. Novel commando. So Lindsay takes commando skeletons and just cleans house. I think she actually used skeletons for this 8-turn game. I think she actually used them for probably 4, 5 of the turns, and just crushed us. So absolutely obliterated us. And then Abby, have to shout out Abby for having one of the best turns I've ever seen in Small World. She ended with 103 points overall, got 27 of them in 1 turn.
Dang.
Which is insane. So it was one of the coolest turns that I've ever seen in Small World. She absolutely capitalized. And then me and Ryan were just having a good time cleaning up the pack. Poor Ryan. Ryan wasn't allowed to have a great game because he was coming after me and Lindsay. So it was just a lot of, we had the experience of even trying weird stuff. So Ryan got a lot of hand-me-downs. And so then usually Ryan would pick the best race available and did a good job, but he only lost to me by 2 points. And I know how to win that game. So we were eons behind Abby and Lindsay, but so Ryan got the raw end, and then that usually opened up a world for Abby to get something really great as well. So he played great. Abby, once again, greatest turn I've ever seen. And of course, got a shout out. Awesome. She absolutely smoked it. So, yeah, I love that game. Super fun. But another game that I love is one that we are talking about today. And you guys are not ready for how fast we got to the main topic. 8 minutes and 37 seconds into the episode. Dang. Jason, that may be the fastest we've ever done this.
That is no doubt. Let's keep it rolling. So the game we're talking about is Call to Adventure. In full transparency, we're going to kind of be talking about 2 versions of it, which play exactly the same. I'll go ahead and say that at the beginning. There's Call to Adventure, the original game, and Call to Adventure Stormlight Archive, inspired by Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight World. It plays exactly the same. Some little nuances, but not in gameplay in some of the cards. So just give you that heads up, because you'll hear me reference to it, because I'm a big Stormlight guy. All right. Released in 2018. I just felt this game was newer than that, even the original version, but that's quite a while it's been around. 2018 is not that long ago, but then it is. It's almost 7 years ago now. So for some reason I thought Call to Adventure was newer than that. Designed by Johnny and Christopher O'Neill. Published by Brotherwise Games, which makes sense because Brotherwise Games also just released Mistborn, the deck building game. Not part of this episode. Okay. So psyched to get it. I got my shipping notification. I missed the original pre-order. Ended up ordering it from just a board game company or board game online retailer. I got the shipping notification yesterday. I'm so excited. It should be here this week. Mistborn, the deck building game. So excited. Anyway, I'll get back. Brotherwise Games publishes that as well. the aforementioned dogs we're talking about. So
there they are.
It plays at 1 to 4 players and plays in 30 to 60 minutes. Inspired by character-driven fantasy storytelling, Call of Adventure challenges 1 to 4 players to create the hero with the greatest destiny by acquiring traits, facing challenges, and overcoming adversaries. Call of Adventure features a unique rune rolling system for resolving challenges, a point-based system that encourages storytelling at the end of the game, and over 150 unique cards. Players begin each game with an origin card that provides their backstory, as well as gives them 2 starting abilities. Each round, they can either acquire trait cards from the board or attempt a face a challenge from the same board. Challenges have 2 possible paths the player could choose from. For example, players who encounter the Thieves Guild may choose to train as a spy or train as a killer. Each challenge has a difficulty that must be overcome by rolling successes on carved runes. The more a player has of the abilities required to overcome the challenge, the more runes they will be able to cast. Failed challenges lead players to acquire experience points that may be spent to push through tougher challenges. Basically gives them different abilities to do things later on. But beware, while some negative experiences will help your hero grow, too many of those will set them on a dark path. As a player's heroes grow in ability and experience, they move on to harder challenges, eventually facing deadly adversaries and acquiring more and more destiny points. Player whose hero has the highest destiny score, i.e. victory points, wins the game.
It is great explanation. I love it. It for anyone, I'll sort of like, we'll talk about this. I'll wait till theme. On the setup and teach side of this, I think it is a really easy setup because it's a lot of cards. The runes that we mentioned, I think the runes might be the coolest feature of the entire game. And the runes, when we say runes, I want you to picture, listeners, shark teeth. Because that's sort of the best way that I can describe them, is they're these flat, like plastic pieces that to me are shark teeth colored, generally, and they have marks on one side and the other. Little domino type vibes.
See it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these runes all come in this tray. So if you're experienced with the game, usually probably the most experienced person can have the tray just sort of sitting next to them. How every time that I've played Call of Adventure, I end up with the runes, and as they're telling me what challenges they're attempting, I can just pull the runes out that they need and hand them to them. And then when they're done, they just hand me back the pile of runes, and I put them back in the tray. Easy to do. Other than that, it's a bunch of decks of cards that are laid out in rows, and then you hand people their stuff. I will say on the cognitive load side, Jason, did anyone else play with you and Elizabeth when y'all played Stormlight Archive?
Xander played. So, because Xander's a Stormlight. My oldest, who does not play board games at all with us anymore, even though he was brought up playing board games, because he's a Stormlight fan. That's part of the reason that got me to get this version of it was Xander was going to play it. So Xander played. Cognitive
load wise, you have Xander, who's not necessarily like brought up in gaming, plays Warhammer, has like a very strategic mind to approach things. So probably a quick study on games, but cognitive load wise, when you're doing the teach, I feel like it can be a lot for the, okay, I have this origin and a motivation and my destiny. I don't really know what to pick. Right. And those can have a tremendous impact on your ability to succeed in the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what's interesting about this, and sometimes Xander, what little he plays, picks stuff up pretty fast because he's a video gamer, so he can pick up the nuances of those things. So he understood the concept, and which we'll talk more about for the rest of the episode on how those symbols work. So he got it, but Elizabeth struggled in getting it because sometimes as a gamer, you think one way about something, and it's actually Call of Adventure is way easier than it sounds, right? Like it truly is so incredibly light and easy. Oh, I have this symbol, I get an extra rune. I'm tossing. Elizabeth's standing there looking at me. But she had a hard time conceptualizing it. And Xander's like, Mom, it's just right here. Like, so the cognitive load can be because there's so many symbols, but in the end, it's like, oh, if you have this symbol, you get an extra rune of that symbol. And that's it. And you're trying to do the numbers. So it's one that I watched a couple of reviews of the game before we played, way back when we played it. And the answer is always the same. Like, it seems more than it really is. And we kind of explain parts of the game, it'll seem more that once you play it, it's like, wow, it's really not. Though it seems because there's all these symbols, you can go the high path, the low path, and you can use a hero card or an anti-hero card or whatever that may be. So to me, I agree that the setup's super easy because as long as you keep the cards separated into 1, 2, and 3, it's like super easy. Like just lay them out because you don't change it for a player count like you can for other games. The teach the gameplay's easy, but the teach can be a little more challenging because of that you talked about. Because there's enough there that it's like, what? What did you? I'm going to do this. Then after you play a couple hands, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And it's not really a lot of not true depth of thought to that after you understand the conceptualization of it.
Yeah, having taught this game a lot, where I've gotten to recently when I teach this game is I almost try to just play a turn out myself just to showcase like, okay. And like when I deal everything out, I usually will flip over the extra origin motivations. And because there's these 3 decks that give you they basically create your character. And we'll talk about this relating to the theme, because I think that the theme is so rich in this game. It also sells the game for me in a major way. But when you're doing the setup and you have these, I will pull from what's left over a origin, motivation, and destiny card, which are the 3 phases of the game. I'll pull one of each of those to build a player so that people can see like, oh, that's what this looks like. And then draw a card from the bottom of the deck or whatever to kind of showcase it. That really helps on the turn. But very similar to Wingspan that we talked about a little bit ago, when you get these cards and you're looking at your initial start, it can feel overwhelming because it's like, I just have no idea what I'm going for. And the key to this game is matching symbols. The more you have of symbols, usually that's going to do you really well for kind of diversifying, or not even diversifying. This is an odd game in that, like, unless your destiny asks you to diversify, you kind of don't have to. You can really lean into certain things. So theming, if you have a D&D background at all, you love character development, this game is so rich in helping you feel that. A game that I know Jason's talked about in games you've played lately is Role Player, where in Role Player, when you build a character in D&D, you roll die to determine like your starting stats. So Role Player took that concept or that part of D&D and made a whole board game out of it. This is the opposite side of the spectrum where you're building your backstory and, like before I even do the first mission of D&D, I wanted to make sure that I was playing a chaotic, evil rogue who was a farmer who his village was stormed. And then suddenly, like in the depths of his crops, he decided, like a burning, he decided that he would fight against the king. Those phrases, a farmer who was attacked, fighting against the king, those are the types of words that are used on your origin, motivation, and destiny card. So like, it is creating that backstory as you go through. But I'm sure the Stormlight Archive, how does it differ?
Yeah, I will say it's really the same in that you have these what seem like generic statements if you don't know Stormlight Archive. So I'm even going to show a card. Like there's a card that you can, it's a trait card in which you can be a slave, but that's a key character development because that's Kaladin, who becomes Kaladin Stormblessed, who's running, he's a bridge runner under a slave. Or there's one called Applied to be a Ward. Well, that's Yasna and Shallan. Shallan's spoiler. I will try to avoid the spoilers. Like Shallan's going to try to be the ward of Yasna, right? There's glimpse into another realm, a generic statement, but then it's Shallan seeing into Shadesmar, and I'll show one more that's really cool. And there's one that's just generically called Defend the King, but if you know the story, that's Zeth, who's all in white, who's an assassin going to kill the king. So from a Stormlight Archives, it is amazing because it's the generic statements of defend the king, endure temptation, glimpse another realm, but which could be any theme, but it fits this perfectly. And then there's some specific ones, like there's one that's called survive a high storm. Well, a high storm is unique to Stormlight, but I love the fact that because the gameplay is the same, you cannot know Stormlight Archive and still enjoy the game because this is essentially the gameplay, of course, is exactly the same. And other than a word here or a word there, you may not understand a high storm is just a storm or whatever. But the thing is the gameplay, but you don't need to know Stormlight for that. But if you're a Stormlight person, it's amazing. Same way Red Rising. If you know Red Rising is so fun and you like Red Rising is another key statement. If you like Stormlight and you like gaming, you come out and you see this character and it may not say this Kaladin, but you know it's Kaladin or you know it's Teft or you know it's Lopin, whatever that is, right? You know these characters. So the theme definitely for Stormlight is not pasted on. It is throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. And I love that kind of a game where the more you lean into it, like I think that the Red Rising game is super fun as an example, but man, am I so much more excited to have the Howlers in my hand. Like I'm excited to find, like Pax Autonomonus and bring him into what I'm trying to play. Whereas Lindsay or like Lindsay Redham, but like if I'm playing with,
like Elizabeth or Ryder, when I play with them, same way, they don't know the characters at all. So
yeah, and so they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like that's fine. I'm going to play the White Knight.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Yeah, let's use his real name here." So I love that richness side of it. So game length is one thing that I think this is a game that like the more you play it, obviously I feel like this is true in a lot of games. The more you play it, the faster it goes. Because there are a lot of decision points that happen during this game. Yeah. Because as you go through the different phases, you have the first phase being your origin. You're going to turn your origin, your motivation face up on your board, which are 2 cards that give you an initial starting, usually set of traits or skills that you have. Because on your turn, you're going to look at the board that is a host of cards available to you. And like Jason was showing, all these cards have a top and a bottom, and you're choosing which of those you want to play for because they will have different traits that you're going for. So attacking the top may give me Constitution, whereas if I choose the bottom, I can get Wisdom. And so I have those 2 traits. So depending on which one I want to go for, I have a certain score that I need to achieve in rolling the runes. And so I'm going to say I'm going for Wisdom. So then I have to get a 4. So I go and I look at my current storyboard and I say, how many Constitution emblems do I have? How many Wisdom emblems do I have? And I pull those in the basic runes. And the runes are just, like I said, these like shark teeth looking domino tiles. Dominoes might be a better word to describe them. They're not shaped like dominoes entirely.
Right.
So
more narrow than dominoes, but a relatively rectangle with symbols on them.
Yeah, and even the runes we have are not so square. Like in our version,
that's right.
They're actually like a little more.
That's right.
Like there are a little more shark toothy. But they're just odd shapes. So it's dice rolling without being dice rolling, which, like I said, is probably one of the coolest parts because they can't land on their sides. They're flat each side. So one side has a marking that's worth 1 point, and on the the characteristic runes, one side's worth 1 point, the other side's worth 2 points. So you're going to get points for that guaranteed. And then the basic runes have blank sides and then sides that give you like a point or let you draw a hero or anti-hero card, which are bonuses that you can use. So I like the manipulation of that. So you cast them, you count up your points. If you got it, congratulations. You take whichever side you went, slide it under that side of your board, and now you have an additional rune. For the next time that you go, you get 1 more rune to roll. Which is really great. And if you fail, you get an experience rune that you can use later on to help you be easier at taking challenges.
That's you described it perfectly for sure, Robbie, because it's hard to, I've said this more than once and I'll try to stop saying it. Once you play it, it's so lightweight, because once you start seeing the symbols and understand, okay, now that I have that symbol in here, I can now have that rune to use for later on. Because you're like Robbie said, there's a pool of runes you grab. That rune doesn't stay in front of you the rest of the game, but you always have access to toss that rune on your turn. Because on your turn, you're the only one playing that turn for sure. And it's the one contrast to that, or the one thing to highlight about this kind of game, is you still are reliant on the cards that come out to have the symbols you want to toss runes with. So when me, Elizabeth, and Xander played, Elizabeth just seemed to have every card come out that she already had the symbols in front of her to toss runes to get that. And I didn't, right? That's just the way it is. It turned out just fine. But I have these 3 symbols, and those symbols just don't come out. And so I'm not getting any bonus. I can still go after it, right? But I'm not getting any bonus runes to go after that unless I wanted to kind of spend some of my, I forgot what the term's called. So there's a little bit of there's a little bit of luck with how the cards come out, but any game where cards come out onto a row, Wingspan, whatever, Cascadia, Calico, there's always the luck of the right thing comes out at the time you need it to be able to go after it, or the thing doesn't need to go, or it doesn't come out, and you just have to maybe pivot or go with something else. What's so funny about this game, not funny, what's I keep saying it's lightweight, but in the game in general, you're only getting 9 cards in the entire game. So one of the unique things about this, when Robbie talked about you have your origin story, and oh my gosh, you start with 3 cards, and essentially, to over summarize it, you're going to get 3 cards to put under your first card that stay part of the card stays up, so you have an ability or those symbols for the rest of the game. Your second card, you're going to get 3 cards underneath it, and your third card, once the first person gets 3 cards underneath theirs, everybody else gets 1 more turn, and that's it. So you're only getting, in general, 9 cards. I can't remember if Called Adventure has it, or if you're the base one does, but at least Stormlight does. It has assistants that come out, or assistants part of the main game as well. That if an assistant comes out, they just get attached to a challenge. Okay, cool. So there's a chance you may get an extra card that's an ongoing ability, maybe. I got 1 assistant in the game, but the game is literally just getting 9 cards. But whenever you're rolling runes, you may be successful, you may not. So you may get a card. It could be a really fast game. If you speed run it, quote unquote, get a card on each turn. Okay, it may be a quicker game. That doesn't mean it's a bad game, because everything may line up perfectly for you to have that great story you want to tell. Or you could keep going after bigger things, because it may help you. You may just want to do it for the fun of it. When Xander and I were playing the Stormlight one, like, I just wanted to do this because it's Stormlight related, right? I wanted to go protect the king, or I wanted to go track the great shell, as opposed to that may give me points at the end of the game. We kept going after those things. So I like that aspect of the strategy of it, and that the game's lighter, but there's still strategy within it on how you choose to do the runes.
Yeah. And it is, I think that whenever it's almost drafting to a degree as you're like pulling these pieces. And I talked about how there are times where you may not have to go as wide as normal. So a lot of it's a tableau builder to a degree, because you're pulling these things down and getting points as you're acquiring those 9 cards. But one of the things that, like, you don't have to go as wide, because sometimes if you're in Elizabeth's situation where, like, the right cards are hitting the board, so I don't have to have any wisdom whatsoever on my board, because I just have strength and constitution, and boom, like, there's another strength card that is 4 points. Awesome. I'm going to go for that one. Like, easy peasy as it comes down. So, but then I've seen games, we played this game a lot at our house. And so I've seen games where you've had all the right cards coming out, but you're just not rolling the runes right. Like, they're just not hitting correctly for you. And you're like, wow, I needed 5. And I threw 5 runes, and I got 2 1s and 3 blanks.
Yep.
That's tough. I just needed some of them to turn the opposite way. Like, it was the perfect storm of mishaps hitting the board incorrectly. And then you have games where I'm going for 5 and I have to get a perfect score. I only have 3 runes to cast, and it's just hitting for me every time. So I like the randomness of it, that it's not just what cards are coming out. It's also how are the runes being cast. And when you're rolling die, because there are so many games that involve rolling die, that can be exhausting to a degree, right? Like when you play Machikoro, it's like, okay, it's just another dice roller where I'm frustrated because die just don't seem to roll my way. I like when a game brings the randomness in a different form of fashion. I think it's why Quacks is just so fun for us, because it's a bag puller.
Right.
And like, I don't do that a lot in other games. So getting to shuffle through, and it's like, oh, that's a cherry bomb. That's tough. Like that, getting to roll those runes is such a great experience. And the runes are really nice from the get-go. I've never went to like research if you can actually go to like Geeky Bits to get better runes, but I really don't know what they would do. Like, just make them metal?
Yeah, I don't know either, because I haven't researched it either, but I don't know why you'd want to change them, other than because they're really light, but they're not going to break because it's a rune. Like, you'd have to physically try to break it. But the lightness helps with tossing them. So once they hit the table, they can roll or flip over the way runes are supposed to do. You said something and I'm blanking all of a sudden. I'm trying to remember. Oh, you said something, let me think about it. Like, I like it's fun to do the difference of runes versus die, because pure dice chucker. I'm on the record. I don't like pure dice chucker. Dice being part of dice manipulation, I like, and this is kind of dice manipulation because you now have cards with symbols that let you pull more runes into it. Call it rune manipulation, right? I like the fact that the cards I get now give me the ability to have more runes for later on, as opposed to Monte Carlo, you're just stuck with the 2 ones you got, right? You're stuck with, if you're going to roll 1 die or 2 die, and it's pure dice roll. Nothing wrong with pure dice roller games, but using dice, using runes to manipulate those to also help you progress the game is good. And I'm losing the term, at least in our game, at least in Stormlight, you can choose to roll a dark rune, and then if it hits, like on the moon side, it counts as 2 hits, but you go down on the hero versus anti-hero track is what's called in Stormlight. Same track but I don't know if it's called hero, anti-hero, or just good versus bad. Good. So, we didn't even talk about this because we lightly talked about it, but coming to strategy too is there's these cards called hero and anti-hero cards. They have 2 different backs for just 2 different slightly colored backs that you all start with one to start the game, and you can play it any time on your turn. And it just does stuff for you. And they're straight up points. Like this one, you can choose a hero to gain these red cards. I forgot what they're called.
Tokens.
Experience. And to do something else. What's cool about that is it's just called the Stormlight card. Well, that's Lopen regrowing his arm. Really cool. If you know the story, it's just fantastic to see that happening, right? But there's a board on your player board. There's a track on the left side that if you go too dark, you now can no longer play the hero cards. You can only play the anti-hero cards. Conversely, if you go too high on the hero track, you can only play hero and you can't play anti-hero. I love that little bit of extra thought to there. Cause Robbie, he's a Slytherin. He goes evil.
I'm going dark every time.
From the beginning. It's not even a thought. But if you go too far down, you will lose points because you get no points. There's points on that track as well based on where you're at. But if you go all the way to the bottom, you get no points, and other people are getting 2, 4, 6, or 8, and it's a pretty tight game. Especially if you're a gamer. Even with us, it was only a few points separated us. So that extra little bit of thought that goes into it, not as to the cognitive load, but as to the gamer in me, loves that I keep calling it a lightweight game, but there are a couple little bitty decisions that definitely affect your overall gameplay.
Yeah, I think on the normal track of our game, when you go down the anti-hero track, it's like if you are 1 spot below the 0, it's like 8 points, which is huge. It's like 4 or 8 points. It's a huge number of points that can really swing it. Yeah. And then if you get 1 more moon, you drop to 0. And so it's like, okay, because every time you roll the dark runes, for every moon you get, you go down on the track. So it's like I could have a really good dark rune turn and drop straight to the big point world, but then I'm not touching dark runes for the rest of the game because I'm like, I just got to earn it flat out. And then the anti-hero cards can be played on, there are things where it's like the hero cards are played on your turn to boost and do all that. And then the anti-hero cards are like, oh, when a person fails the challenge, you can play this to attempt their challenge. Or when a person succeeds a challenge, play this card and they now have to pick another challenge and roll again, basically. They can't repeat the same challenge. Yeah,
Elizabeth played one of those because she needed to play it because it helped her because of an ability she had. So she played it on me, but she didn't know. She literally took my ability. I literally couldn't get anything in the row. Because I'm going to do this. She played a card that basically I could still toss runes, but it was physically impossible because I couldn't go after a challenge with this symbol on it, right? And so, and there were 2 of those 4 cards. A third card was a trait, but you can only take the trait with a unique ability, right? Some traits are just things that help you on as the game, but some you can only do if you have da-da-da. So the only other card I could even go for, I physically couldn't get because I couldn't add any runes to it. I'm like, I'm just going to toss runes for fun and I'm going to keep going, right? Because I couldn't. She's like, why did it mean to do it that bad? Because she didn't know that's what I was going for. She didn't know that's, but anyway, so for games that are lightweight, this is also a game where you can kind of use those anti-hero cards to mess with other people. Not in horrible ways, but it took away a whole turn. And in a game when you're getting 9 cards, if you just don't get a turn to do anything, that could be a big thing. So
yeah, which I will say is one of the big drawbacks of the game for me. In putting it together, because Lindsay and I have played this game a lot. A 2-player account is where we've played this the most, because this is one of those games that we talked about it with Small World, where like Lindsay had to have the cheat sheet in front of her, but she didn't really have to have the cheat sheet in front of her because she's played the game enough to know like, oh yeah, this does this. It was more refreshing. On this one, I think I could literally bust this game out right now and put it on the table, and Lindsay and I would not have to look at the rules at all. Like, we know you start with X amount of experience tokens. We know how the whole game runs. And because we've played it so much, there have just been games where I go to like Lindsay goes first. She gets a card added to her board. I go and I miss, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I take that experience token, but it still hurts. Lindsay goes on her turn. She gets a card. I get a card. Lindsay goes, she gets 3 cards. She's done with the first phase. I miss the challenge again. Now I'm at 1 card. I am 2 cards behind.
Yeah.
And it's like trying to catch up is just so difficult, because if she doesn't miss, I just lose. Yeah. I just straight up lose. And it is so, and we've had it happen both ways before. And it's just a tough experience when you lose, when you miss early and you're like, I just have to sit through and suffer through this game for like the next 25 minutes because I literally didn't, like, I rolled and the runes did not go my way twice in the first 3 rounds. And it's just GG. I don't love that there's not a lot of catch-up mechanics in the game.
Yeah.
Because of that.
I wonder if some of this just isn't, because there are other versions of it and there have been sequels to it. And I don't know if there's any expansion. So I wonder if that's a known thing that they have the ability for that. But, you know, so many dice / rune chucking games have that. If the, you know, I said annoyingly when we play Space Bay, if the dice don't go your way, they just don't go your way. I know that more than anything on stupid Board Game Arena. There are days I'm like, what? Like, whatever. I get so mad because I play Castle Burgundy more than anything else on Board Game Arena. I'm like, oh, I got to go take worker. I got to take an action to get workers again and they're rolling perfect. And I got to take a whole action just to get workers to manipulate a dialect, whatever. Okay, I get so mad at that. But that's dice rolling game, right? Thankfully, I'll come back to gameplay, especially in a 2-player game. Who knows it? I mean, you said 25 minutes. It's probably shorter than that, to be honest, right? If you know the game, the good thing about that, if you know the game, a 2-player one, because you're only getting 9 cards each. You know what you want to do. Tops. Yeah, 20 minutes tops. Like, it truly is. So you can just reset it and play again if you wanted to. 4-player game, because if you know the game. Many games I can say this, but some games, even Dinosaur Island, you can know the game like the back of your hand like I do, and the game's still going to take 2.5 to 3 hours if you play the long version because there's just so much to do. This, you're choosing a row to go after a card. Okay, here's the runes, toss. Okay, well, I got it or I didn't. Now it's your turn. Hardcore AP people at the beginning of it will slow down, and Elizabeth is struggling to conceptualize it, but by the end, like any good gamer, she's like, okay, I'm going after this. I'm doing this. I know I got these 3 runes. I can do this. The game is not long. It says 60 minutes for a 4-player game. I would say that's if you're playing with slower people or the first time who don't know it. But if you know it, you can still socialize and play it in 45 minutes, a 4-player game. There's no doubt in my mind if you know it, because your first couple of turns, you kind of think what path I want to go on. But then the path is laid out for you. It's hard to pivot. To Robbie's point, It's hard to pivot late in this game. If the cards aren't coming out or the runes aren't coming out, well, you're going down the path and you may know you're going to lose, but hey, have fun playing the game and seeing what you can do and then telling your story at the end.
Yeah. I would say it's like turn 2 and 3 and turn 8 and 9. If someone's perfect, turn 2 and 3, 8 and 9 are probably the longest turns of the game. Because turn 1, you're just like, everything hits and you're like, all right, cool. I have strength and dexterity in my starting hand. So I'm just looking for a strength and dexterity challenge, like right off the bat. Okay, cool. So your decision's easy, and then you start adjusting. And then on those last couple turns, you're like, okay, I got to think maximum points here because I'm really trying to finish things out. One thing that on the replayability side that I think is really cool about this game is its focus on how the destiny, which is the last card you get, can have such a tremendous impact on shaping the whole rest of your board. So your destiny, when you get these 3 cards to start, you get your origin, your motivation, and your destiny. You get 2 of each, and you get to pick which one you want to try to connect the 3 cards together. So it's not just like, well, I got randomly dealt these cards. They aren't synced up whatsoever. And I'm just like I'm in trouble from the start. So I like that you have that. You're going to, at the start of your game, you're going to reveal, and we always do it at our board kind of thematically, like, hello, everyone. I am a squire who is searching for greatness. Like that is my, the more you lean into it, we talked about this in hidden role games. I'm an actor. That's what I do. I ham it up. And so you do that, but your destiny actually stays hidden for the whole game until it's over, and then you reveal it and it's like a hidden scoring goal that's going to be different for each one. So some of the some of the destinies are you have to acquire one of every trait, and if you do, you get 9 points. Like that's cool. Some of them are for every strength rune you have, you get 2 points, and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of sick. Or there's one that like basically is becoming a villain. For every anti-hero like symbol card you have, you get an extra point. So all those are doubled, and it's like, oh, okay. So there's a lot of variance to it. The more you play it, the more you realize there are some really powerful Destiny cards and some really bad Destiny cards. Is there other games you've seen, Jason, where you have this like penultimate hidden scoring goal that seem to have that variance of really good to really bad?
I can't think of any that are hidden goals like that. Yeah, there's some in the expansion that depend on how the cards come out, like Sagrada. This is so random, right? But in Sagrada, some of the hidden scoring goals are easier to get if you're using the expansion in there. And if you still get stuck with an expansion hidden goal for Sagrada and someone else has a basic one, because the biggest expansion one that helps, like you get one, I think the basic one you have, okay, all your yellow score or whatever, right? But then if you have an expansion one, it could be all the dice in the spots score. So you're not tied to a color, you're tied to a space. And we've had that happen. I'm stretching a little bit because it's an expansion thrown into it, and that it can happen that way. So like we almost have a rule like you get dealt 2 goals in Sagrada and then you choose one as opposed to just being given one to try to, for those who know how to play it. I can't think of another. Go ahead.
Lords of Waterdeep, maybe? I know that we've talked about before, like in Lords, there's like that. There's a couple of the Lords.
There's one. Well, in the base game, it's the Lord. If you're the builder and no one stops you, that one is wildly overpowered. But if you play it enough and someone keeps going for buildings, it's like the science cards in Seven Wonders. If someone's going for science, whoever's to their right or left better stop them, or they're going to win. Like we know that's what in general, if no one stops the person going for science, they can easily smoke everybody else. So the people to the right or left of the science person need to make sure they're paying attention. In Lords of Waterdeep, it's the builder without doubt. If you're the builder and no one's, because everything else is just like 2 different kinds of cards for the base game, Skullduggery and Arcane or Pyatt, whatever, right? It's you're adding up your cards, and that's just the luck of the cards and everything else. But if you're the builder, good call, and no one stops you, you can easily smoke everybody because you're getting the stuff for the buildings, and it's an ongoing engine for you, and you get points at the end. It's like, I love being the builder, but usually people know it really quick and I don't get to build anything, especially we're playing with Elizabeth because she's like, oh, or she always assumes I'm the builder because I like buildings anyway. Yeah. But I can't think of another one.
And if you want to balance it, I think that one of the ways you could balance this as a like house brew is if I'm playing Lords of the Waterdeep and I know that that's really overpowered, you know what? We'll just pull the builder out.
Absolutely.
And then shuffle and deal out so that we know no one's the builder. And sure, that takes away some of the like variance in gameplay and hidden scoring goal type deal. But I think if you're playing and you've played this a lot, there are certain cards in the origin or in the destinies that it's like, oh, this is just a really low point card. And because there are super high points, you could take it either way. You could get rid of the really low point ones, or you could say, oh, these are really broken. Like as a guy who loves to play the villain arc in it, I know if I get the villain or destiny, I'm going to get 50 points that game. Like I just know that I'm going huge because I know how to play that side of the game really well and get all the points. So you can just take that out and ignore it entirely. And it doesn't make the game any worse. It just balances it, which is a perk.
for certain. House rule, we talked about on episodes before that it took me years to realize house ruling is just fine as long as you don't, as long as you don't realize you're house ruling it and think everybody else is stupid. As long as you know you're house ruling it, right? One of those is taking out the ravens from Wingspan, right? That's one of the house rules because they're the OP turn in. You get it's resource based, right? So you can smoke people if you get a couple ravens out there. Terraforming Mars has a bunch of cards that are a little more take that in them when you activate them, but they have little bitty red dots on them, right? You can take those out. Dead of Winter. We've probably talked many times. Have you played Dead of Winter? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We have to play
next trip.
Hit and roll game, zombie game. So haven't played it in years. Dead of Winter is amazing. I don't think we've ever won Dead of Winter. Cooperative game.
Okay.
Which could have a trader. We've had traders win. Very interesting, right? But a house rule is to take traders out. If you don't want to deal with the trader in there, you can just take the trader out, right? So house ruling games is not don't worry about house ruling game if it makes the game more fun. Don't totally break the game, but like one of our house rules, I think I've said before, is on Wingspan. In Wingspan, you're given 2 private scoring goals, and you're supposed to decide then. Well, my house rule is you do it after the second round. So you're not stuck in a single path. And I probably said this when we talked about Wingspan last week or 2 weeks ago. So you're not stuck in a path that you never get the card. Because your 5 cards that you're dealt with at the beginning, your 2 bonus cards may have nothing to do with those cards. And you may not see them for a couple rounds. So our house rule is you choose your bonus card after the second round. And I came up with that because I saw other games do that as well. Arc Nova does that. Dog Park does that. I think some other games do it where you get rid of your private scoring goal after a certain time. So you have time to choose which one. That makes total sense. And like, I'm sure Elizabeth Hargrave, I know doesn't care at all if people do that, but like, she would be like, oh yeah, that makes total sense now at this point that you choose later on what that private scoring goal is. So that's a tangent on house ruling. Don't ever feel bad if that helps the game play better or get it to the table more often.
Yeah, I completely agree. I honestly, it's funny because some house rules are just so good that when you meet people and you like try to talk to them about a game in the board gaming community, like that house rule has just become so much a part of their view of the game that you're like, brother, that is just not how, like, that's not how it works. Exactly. But I wish it was because it is better. I love getting in conversations with folks about how they adjust. When we did D&D, we had a similar vibe of, we called it the rule of cool. Like if it seems cool and it doesn't break the game, why not? Like just go for it. So talking about production inside of this game, I love the production there. I don't know that I have like a single thing that, like, even just talking about that, how could you upgrade it?
Right. If there's any critique, and it's not, if there's any critique you could do is on your player board is pretty base. It's not bad. And the design of it is great. Like it does everything. The art is cool, but it's just kind of flimsy, like cardboard paper, right? Construction paper. Not bad. But when you have these really high quality runes and an okay tray that holds them, and even on tarot size cards for the main cards, tarot size cards for the bigger cards, the art, it's the same artist for both this and the regular card adventure. And of course, the Stormlight stuff is amazing. Like everything about it is, I guess the one thing you could upgrade is the experience things because they're little cardboard chits. So maybe you could, upgrade those if you really liked it, because these are just little bitty cardboard things. You could just buy whatever you
cardboard,
right? Well, what yours are not cardboard or yours actual?
Mine are plastic.
Oh, see, exactly. So that's.
And we don't even have like a premium version. That's so interesting.
So mine are cardboard because if I played this enough, I would probably go to Amazon and just find like little gems or something, right? Like it's very easy to do that. But that's the only, if I picked anything, it's the play, and they're not bad, but when compared to everything else, this is standard for a game. Let's be clear, a player board that's kind of not flimsy, but not super stiff. The really good ones are dual layered and slot the cards in, and you can slot the pieces on the side. But that's it. To me, the art is what the whole production is good. The art actually elevates the overall opinion of the game. The game's fine. We'll get to the cookie score in a second. It's a lightweight game. It's a fun game, but the art elevates it. And being Stormlight, of course, makes it like out of this world for me, for my particular version of it. But across the board, the art is awesome. The production, it's hard to find, other than the one we talked about. It's hard to find anything else wrong with the production of the game.
Yeah, this is one that we haven't talked about it as an episode, and I'm I'm just still so shocked that we haven't, because I think that it's such a staple for Jason and I in teaching people games is Dixit, where the production is so incredible that you look at the art on the cards and you're like, oh, I could hang so many of these in my house. Like it's there. If I was much more of a fantasy type enjoyer, the art is the same way in here. Like there are so many cool like frames and moments. And I'm sure you want to go like even crazier. If you wanted to have like a really custom art piece, you could take someone who's like good at graphic design and take several of these pieces and be like, I want you to put me in this pose. Like I want you to just get rid of that person's face and put my face on it. And that would be a sick art piece or a really cool like Christmas present to give someone, things like that.
Yep.
So I love that side of it. $40 currently on Amazon, goes on sale on a regular basis. I think that's because there are multiple versions that are out there.
Yep.
The base game you can find really, really affordable. I'll talk about it in my cookie rating, but this price is unbeatable to me.
Yeah, especially with the production we just talked about. It's harder to find the Stormlight Archive one. Harder's relative. It's sold at Barnes & Noble. I got mine at Barnes & Noble when it was on a sale. I've seen, that's the most common place I've seen it in person is at the Barnes & Noble, but online, all the game stores like Game Nerds and Card House and a lot of those have it. My mind just blanked. Oh, I wanted to go back. So Dixit, Robbie and I both know we'll eventually talk about that. And there'll be another one where we talk about two versions probably because I got Disney Dixit coming in. Exact same game, right? But it's Dixit. So anyway, we'll eventually
I can't
talk
wait to hear about it because I almost pulled the trigger on Black Friday on Disney Dixit. Like I looked at it like 4 different times.
Well, I've wanted it for so long. I don't need it. Look at all these games. And I almost canceled it, but it's half price and it's sitting in my garage right now. So it'll help be the impetus for that. It'll be one of the next few episodes we do is talk about Dixit for sure. So yeah, $40. You can't beat it across the board. I'm going to go first with the cookie scale, if that's okay. I already kind of referenced it in that it's lightweight game, fun, easy. I liked it when we learned it. It's one that my rating is a sugar cookie. So it's one that once we played Call to Adventure, I was like, well, maybe I'll buy Call to Adventure one day. But once I realized there's a Brandon Sanderson version of it and I got to play that version. Of course, that changed it for sure. If I just judged it, the gameplay will always be a sugar, but because I love Brandon Sanderson, it would jump up to a double doozy, right? It's so exciting. Even just pulling those cards out, I was getting excited. The newest game came out, Wind and Truth just came out for Brandon Sanderson on Friday. It's already in my Audible. I'm trying to re-listen to Rhythm of War right now, just so I can be refreshed on it. I'm so excited. But it's a sugar cookie for me. Light gameplay, easy gameplay, so fun, so different. Tossing runes as opposed to tossing dice. Can't go wrong with it. Definitely love it.
Yeah, I was really between two on this. Like this is the hardest that I've had to think on a rating in quite some time. Because there are a lot of pros and cons to me. A lot of pros, very few cons. I talked about one of my biggest cons is the gameplay feels super interactive and super incredible almost every time. And you have to think that there's a couple times where it's just not going to be the best experience, a la Bang the Dice game, where, man, I just get like, I didn't get to take a turn and I can't let that shape my entire view of the game. But I have to understand that when I sit down to play the game, that's a possibility. Like it could happen. There are times that I'm going to play this game and the runes are not going to roll my way. The cards are not going to go my way. And I'm just stuck. But I love, like Jason mentioned, that I can just play again. Like it plays that fast. And so it comes in as a chocolate chip for me. It doesn't quite have the stones to push it to a double doozy just because of that one element of when it's bad, it feels bad. So like those games stand out to me just as much as the games where I have had like everything hitting, everything's rolling and all of that. Now I will say the reason if it's a chocolate chip though, I mean, it is, if I like the right gust of wind pushes it into a double doozy for me. And here's where I'll sell the listeners on this game. If you are someone who regularly has a game night that's 2 of you and a significant other, you and a roommate, whatever, this game fits perfectly as a 2-player game. I could argue, and I in fact think in our list of 2-player games, I think I actually had this on my top 10 lists because I play it most often at 2 players. And I love this game at 2 players. It's so excellent. It's a blast to play. Lindsay and I played it so much. But also, when other people show up, it doesn't feel that different to play at 4, which is not an experience you get very often. Like usually, if it plays amazing at 2, it's great at 3, and it's meh at 4. Or it's bad at 3, great at 4 again, because now someone cannot be like not focused. So because its variance at player count is so good, and then also you can play it at 1. Like you can just straight up go through to see how many points I can get and roll the runes. I have done that multiple times when I just really want to get like an itch of playing a game. It plays phenomenal. So there is so many pros to it with very few cons. I love this game. I actually, for my birthday this year, got an expansion to it, which just adds in more cards and more mechanics. I will say, I just thought of this, Jason, when we talked about like the bad mechanic. The one slight catch-up mechanic that it has is that when someone advances to the second age or like the second act of the thing, technically when someone opens that, you are allowed to start going for that as well.
Right.
So you don't have to continue going for the first one. Yep. So the catch-up mechanic in theory is that I can go for more powerful cards. It's easier for me, like it's harder for me to get them. But once I get 1 or 2 of them, that could be enough to like tip the scales to get me right back in it. But it's a weak catch-up mechanic. So I did think about that. Just a second ago.
It makes sense though, right? It's at least there's something there to help out. Cause if you're like you said, you don't necessarily want to be the first cause you're opening up for everyone else to get those better cards. But if everything's hitting correctly, it's going well. I will highlight the call to the Stormlight Archive one actually has a formal solo variant that reviews have been pretty good. If you want to play it solo, we don't really talk too much about solo games. A lot of the games we talk about have solo variants in there. Wingspan being one that a lot of people actually like, and I've played solo. I haven't played this solo, but if you want to try solo gaming out, that's an option. It also, the Call to Adventure folks have an expansion for Name of the Wind. So talking about another book series, there's a book series called Name of the Wind that has an expansion. I don't know anything about it other than there's an expansion to the original Call to Adventure that adds more cards to it. You did say, talking about, you actually had Call to Adventure for your number 2-player game.
Yeah.
And of course smash up with number 1. But what's ironic, this just has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but my number 1 was Catan card game, and Caleb Jones, Foundation and Bards fans, hit me up the other day saying he really enjoying the Catan card game. So I'm glad to hear that. And like I will play that with Robbie at some point because I love the Catan card game. It can play it without ever touching Settlers again. We talked about that before, so I'm not surprised. But your rating makes sense for sure. And it's I have a lot of games. So many of these games, like 10 years ago, my rating probably be higher, but I have so many games that it being Stormlight, I will never hesitate to bring it out. Like if and when John ever swings back through, or we're with your brother, John, at some point, I would bring this out just so he could see, cause he's a big Stormlight guy, right? Just so he could see these characters that are just so fun and so amazing. And Xander had the same way. He was kind of geeking out on me like, oh, this is cool. This is fun. So if you're a Stormlight fan, and read the stuff from the Stormlight, and you're thinking about this game, I cannot emphasize it enough, for sure.
Dude, absolutely. It is. You saying it came out in 2018. Lindsay and I have been playing this game for so long. It makes me think that we must have gotten it pretty soon after release. Like, because we've pretty much been playing it our entire marriage, and we got married in 2017. So that, like, I think that's part of why it's like, there's just so much nostalgia and memory of Lindsay and I playing it together that it's locked in. Jason, I got to tell you a funny story here on the podcast to close it out as for a final thought. So my friend Tyler just moved to Destin, and we're a crew that we do trivia every week. Our team name's You're Cheating. You know it. You know this about us. So Tyler was our team captain. He moved away. We're like, oh man, that stinks. We're sad to lose him. So we've done trivia a couple times without him. It feels sad and hopeless without him regardless, but he's off in a better place, living a great life down in Destin. So he decided he and his girlfriend were going to go try to find trivia. Okay. So they went, and he texts us while we were hanging out, and he goes, Man, we're getting absolutely rocked at trivia, but the host tried to skip a toys and game question because he'd never heard of the game. ... It was Catan.
He'd never heard of that? Oh my gosh. Like, where are you to not actually know Catan somehow?
Bro,
That's
like
funny.
we were cackling when he sent that
crazy.
text of like, that's
funny.
incredible. So as much as we dog on Catan here on the podcast, we have to understand that our hobby, and those of you listening to this, it's still way more niche than we thought, because there's nobody here listening to this podcast who's never heard of Catan. And we have people hosting trivia that just have never heard of it. But to be fair, you know, trivia is one of those things. You don't know what you don't know. Like our host, who we love dearly, had a wicked question come up and called her Elphaba, and like kept saying it over and over again. And you could watch the pitchforks being raised by people of like, say it right. So what a time. Jason, any final thoughts, man?
No, it's good, man. I'm glad we were able to do this. And the next episode will be what it'll be. It'll be a surprise to us all. Probably like, I didn't approve that, but
yeah, y'all hold it down. You're going to have a great time.
We'll
Enjoy. Please listen to episode. I'm excited to listen to episode 35. As someone who hosts 2 podcasts, I always love when I'm not here to see what happens, what the episode sounds like. So I get to experience my first Bards of the Board episode listening. It'll be a good time. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have an amazing holidays, because our next time an episode comes out, it will be right after Christmas. So, have Merry Christmas to everyone. Merry Christmas to you, Jason, and we'll see you guys for episode 35.